Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. Today's episode is particularly close to my heart as I sit down with my loving husband. Well, we've been together for 22 years. This was not loving husband of 22 years, loving husband of 15 years to be this year. We're sitting down together to maybe reflect a little on our journey together, how things have gone. Maybe we call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. This episode has been a request by a few people. One person in particular who's been on us to talk a little bit about what it's been like being an interracial couple. And as an interracial couple, how have the last 22 years been for us? So I'm looking forward to this on so many different levels because Carrie and I actually haven't planned this out. We haven't done anything different than what I would do with any of the other guests that I've had on thus far. So I'm curious to see how this goes. So, hey, I'm going to welcome you. Hey, Carrie.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Sorry you didn't get a little gift on your chair.
That's the only thing I was going to say. There's no gift for me.
I know. Well, we did it. We're here. We've been talking about doing this episode or an episode like this for some time, and we're officially sitting down here together. So I'm curious to see how it's going to go. How are you doing today? What do you think?
I'm tired after the 16-kilometer hike.
Oh my goodness. We did a 16-kilometer hike today, our first one of the summer. And so I guess we thought if we do 16 kilometers, maybe that'll allow us to feel like we're caught up. In
how many miles is that for your U.S. listeners?
Some miles for sure. We can fact check that in a second. I'm sore. Are you sore from the hike?
I don't get sore.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, why don't we call this sort of like the highlights of the good, the bad, and the ugly in the last, I think it'd be kind of cool for us as our 15-year wedding anniversary is approaching. It'd be kind of cool for us too to reflect back and maybe we learned something that we didn't know about each other or about our relationship. So let's go into the Middle Fingers Up segment. So
I did want to thank
Okay, sure.
your couple listeners that did ask for this.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think we're super special.
Yeah.
There are obviously other relationships that are very positive and healthy around us, but I mean, maybe we're a bit different because how we are.
Because of our backgrounds? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that could be. That's it. I appreciate that you said that.
Just want to thank them.
Yeah. I like that. I'm glad you did that. And I agree with you. It felt, the reason why we haven't done it is because it feels weird, right? We're like, oh my gosh,
Well, it's also nice when people ask.
Because they see something that we don't, maybe?
Well, maybe. But it's just nice that when listeners ask for specific things, like, hey, I'd like to hear about this, or what do you think about that? And those are the fun ones for me, listening to you do them.
Yeah. Because
you're doing it for your knowledge, and then you're also like fulfilling someone else's.
Oh, yeah.
Right away, right? So,
yeah. I agree. I love that. I love when anyone and everyone will give us feedback or ask for something in particular. So it's fun because it keeps us going. I appreciate that. So that's good. I'm glad you said that. Should we jump into our Middle Fingers Up segment?
Sure.
Okay.
You go first.
No, that's not how it works. I'm the host. You're the guest. So why don't you share what you want to put your middle fingers up to?
I'd like to put my middle fingers up to when you go on a hike and you walk at a certain speed, and then the individuals you go on a hike with walk at another certain speed that is obviously way slower. And if there's any incline or decline at all, it's apparently really scary, even though it's maybe 2 degrees. And then I was going
to let you finish
for walking too fast.
No, you can't take away my. See, I shouldn't have shared with you my middle fingers up.
Oh, you did? No,
you know what? We can just stop here and go right into mine now, because I just want to say this. My middle fingers up today is for anyone and everyone out there that shares this important, connection and loyalty to the principles First of all, hiking. Why, right? Like, why? Why even do it? But we did it. Okay, so we got through it, 16 kilometers. That was fun with our children. Kudos to them. But at one point during the hike, my husband, who is also my guest today, so we're having like a conflict of interest, and our eldest son just like take off. And then my youngest son and I are in the back, and my brother and his wife and their dog are with us, and they were gone for minutes. And also, you guys, in the Carrie's backpack was all of our waters. So I didn't have water. It was super hot. I'm super frustrated. Like, way to like check in on your group, right?
Well, it just happened that leg. We typically stop at every map, and the maps were a couple kilometers.
Okay, but it kept going. It was 5 kilometers from the one map to the other. Okay, but at some point, Carrie, also, I'm also concerned that you and our son didn't care for water. Like, you guys didn't need water in that 5 kilometer.
No, we had all the water.
Okay, so you did stop for water?
We stopped all the time. You guys were that slow that behind us.
Okay, so you stopped that many times not to think, oh, maybe the rest of them need some water too.
I didn't know you didn't have water.
Well, where would my water be, hun?
I thought you had the other backpack.
You know what? You need to give a different middle fingers up. You don't get to share the other
middle
one.
Finger.
I know. I was I had a different one. I had a whole different one. I had so many. And I thought, oh, why don't we put our middle fingers up to something that irritates us about, the other in the relationship. But then after today, I was so mad at you. I was like, I'm going to say
so. This episode's about our good relationship.
Love Beyond Borders.
Yeah,
a journey of 22 years. Okay, do you want to change your middle fingers up? I think you should. You don't have to at the end of the day. However,
I don't know what to get. Yeah, I guess I'll give my middle fingers up to, because I'm looking at it right now and it really bothers me, my cell phone. You know when you go get those cell phone protector
like
things?
Ghost,
yeah, whatever
it's called, Ghost Face, Ghost Rider.
Yeah, let's just pay, I don't know, whatever it is, $10 to $30 to get your plastic covers on your phones. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, it's only $10 if it messes up. And they know that it's going to mess up because it always does, and it peels off. And then now they have a card that if you go back for the $10 like 6 times, you get a free one. So now I've effectively paid $100 if I fill this card up to get these plastic covers on my phone. And I don't even know if they really work.
Well, obviously they don't, because we keep going back. So
yeah. Anyways, maybe the middle finger's up to myself for continually going back.
I like that. Middle fingers to yourself. That's a good one. Okay, well, I'm glad you changed it. That was good. So I am sorry that your phone protector thing is falling apart.
Yeah, thanks. And I multiplied by 2 because you have the same one.
I know, right? Problems. Okay, well, that wraps up our middle fingers up. Yay to Carrie and I.
But you didn't do one.
I did. I told you what my middle fingers went up to.
You don't have to change yours?
No.
Oh, okay.
You did. That was mine. You don't. When you're in a group together doing an activity, people can't just wander off without sharing that and checking in.
I wouldn't have changed mine.
You have mine is very, very relevant. Very relevant.
So Kieran just got a gift, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and it's a keychain that says something like, "But did you die?"
Yeah, it's for my sister.
But did you die? I like that keychain because I think it sums up a lot.
This episode's going to be really great.
Edit.
Everything. It's going to be 2 seconds. It's like an Eminem song when you edit out the swear words.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyways, that was my middle fingers up. I hope in the future that you will take my feedback into consideration and look back and check in with the rest of the group.
Yeah.
You also did this when we climbed Machu Picchu. I think there's 2 other people that would agree.
That day I asked. That one day at Machu Picchu. Or
that was good.
The Inca Trail, to be correct.
Yes.
I said, hey, I'm just going to go ahead.
Yeah.
And everyone had their own water at the time. And no one died as well.
No. Thankfully. But almost at the end of that trip.
Yeah. I don't recall.
The airport allergy?
Oh, yeah. That was that trip. That's every trip.
Yeah.
So, full disclosure, every trip we go on, Kieran has a peanut allergy or a nut allergy of some sort in every country.
It's true. It's not a good situation. This last one was bad. But you know what? I'm going to tell you something. That I was actually going to share that story at some point, but whatever. I'll just maybe I'll wait to see if we get there. Hey.
Sure.
Okay. So why don't we? Okay. So when we were asked about this episode together, I think the question was, how are we still together? Maybe after this amount of time, people from the outside seem to see that we are doing really well and enjoying our time together and all those things. And I, from the inside, would agree. I think it's kind of cool that we were asked to have this conversation. So when I was sort of thinking about what questions we could ask each other, I just got curious about some stats, and I think people love their data and stats. So I just thought maybe we can go through a couple things, and starting with the piece about interracial relationships. Okay. So first of all, there's not a whole lot of stuff out there for us with anything to do particularly with diversity stats. I think that's interesting. Like when we look at demographics, the last thing I could find was data from 2011, and it was through the National Household Survey done here in Canada. And so in this survey, they shared that about 4.6% of all married and common law couples in Canada were in a mixed race relationship.
I think maybe you have to give your last guest, Brent, a call. He has a stats guy.
I know. And this is very interesting because we did just release that episode with Brent Dodging Horse, and exactly what he said is true, that these stats are collected and we're not given them. And so it could be really helpful for many reasons. So I'm glad you brought that up because I thought of that too. So, okay, so 4.6% of all married and common law couples in Canada are mixed unions. So of that 4.6%, 3.9% of those couples were composed of either one person, sort of like you and I, being a part of a visible minority community, and the other being Caucasian. And then a very small percentage from there was both couples were from two different visible minorities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
it's more common for one minority.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when they compare these results, there was another census done this one was just sort of like a summary of the data. So they collected some other info back from 1991. Percentage of mixed union relationships were at 2.6% of couples. And then you just see it increase. And majority of these interracial relationships were reported in Vancouver having the highest rate, and then Toronto, which makes so much sense because of the diversity population. And I thought that was funny because our story began in the Lower Mainland. So maybe we can talk a little bit about how we met. So we met in college.
School, yeah.
Right? So I was
not high school.
That'd be so weird because you're 4 years older than me.
Oh man, I failed a lot.
It's always funny when you compare that, when you're like, in high school years, this would never be allowed. But then in adult years, it's okay in some ways. Well,
and you thought I was younger anyway.
Yeah, I remember meeting you. I took a summer class. You took a summer class. It was a children's literature class. I took it for extra credits. Why'd you take it?
Because it was super easy.
Yeah. And
you're like taking school in summer already.
I know.
Having to get an English credit. So you might as well take the easiest thing ever.
Yeah, I did that in like
Harry
philosophy.
Potter. And I still failed, I think, because I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't do the final presentation.
Yeah. I thought she'd just let me slide on it.
Yeah, well, that teacher.
Lesson learned.
That teacher had a thing for Carrie.
Well, that's why I thought she would let it slide.
That was very interesting, that whole conversation. I actually do remember you walking into that room. I like remember you right in those like early moments. And it was funny because there's a girl that I went to high school with, and we had just graduated from high school and started college. And so we saw each other in this class. We're like, oh, let's sit next to each other. And so we both had like this little tiny crush on you. But then you started saying really weird things in class. Like that one time that we were analyzing Cinderella.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone was sort of giving what you said was, we were talking about her purity and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden you put your hand up and she's like, yes, Carrie. And you're like, actually, I think Cinderella was a slut. Do you remember?
Not
yes, you did. You totally said that in class, and everyone was like, and she was like, okay.
I would never have said that.
Okay, well, I remember it being that way.
Well, Maybe I did, but it was a long time ago.
You said something along those lines. But anyways,
Anyway,
you started saying weird things because that is you. You always go to the other part of an argument that nobody has even thought of going to. So she's like, I don't know about this guy anymore.
I was analyzing it.
Oh yeah. She's like, I don't know about this guy anymore. And I there's something wrong with me because I was the one that was like, oh, I think he's so
but I also think that
interesting.
so Kieran had a picture of Fred Durst on her binder.
Oh my gosh.
So I think that
I remember that now. I forgot. Yeah. I was like 18 years old and going to college with a Fred Durst picture on my binder. And I'm no Fred Durst.
I remember walking in the first day and looking around and sitting down.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody. I just had moved to the Lower Mainland.
From where?
From New Zealand. And then, anyway, so I didn't know one person.
And you were in New Zealand because you left your hometown to just go travel.
So you're in a city, you don't know anybody. So you go sit down beside people that you think maybe you have something in common with.
Well, that's interesting that you say that because the girl that I sat next to was also South Asian.
Yeah, and you'd known her from high school.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So two things there. So I was like, yeah, let's sit next to each other. But yeah, anyways, so that's kind of, and ended up being in it's a cute story. We don't have to give it all away yet, but.
I set up the reason we were in the group.
What do you mean?
How we met. I set the group up.
How so?
Well, because I was the one that gave, we all had to give our ideas of what we should do a write-up about or a presentation.
There's 4 different groups. Okay.
Yeah, so I gave it an example of what I would want to do, and you picked that one to be in as well. So obviously then everyone has to exchange phone numbers or pager numbers back then. I mean, I made up the group, you joined it.
Yeah, it was kind of like part of our year-end
Right, and then we had get together in quotations outside of school to work on this thing. 4 or 5 of us.
I don't remember any of the other people in this group. I just remember you.
Of whoever was in part of the group.
I remember getting a phone call from Carrie. The first time Carrie called me, he started with, "Is this Kieran?" And I'm like, yeah, who's this? And he says that he got my number from a bathroom stall and it said to call for a good time. I still remember that because I was like, oh my gosh, who is this? Like thinking that somebody actually would do that. Actually, write my number. Yeah, right.
And I called from work. So I worked through college. So at this work, we're not supposed to have the access to call outside of work, but I figured it out. And I'm walking around the store. Working.
It's a big red store where you can buy office supplies.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm walking around the store talking to you.
Yeah. So anyways, that's where our journey sort of started. We kind of just hit it off and started seeing each other. And I also remember at that time, it was interesting for me because I really liked you. I liked dating you, but I hadn't really dated very many people prior to you that were long-term or that obviously I would consider sharing with my family. And really how I grew up in my time, there was a lot of secrecy. So we weren't really in our community allowed or given permission to date. Dating wasn't okay. It's kind of like when you're of age and you get married. And so I knew that I wasn't allowed to date, but I was also 18, 19 and being like, that's a dumb rule. I'm just going to do it anyway. And so.
Is it still like that now?
I think some families maybe still, kids have to lie about I meet you down the street, pick me up down the street, how, so that's funny because when we started dating, I hadn't quite told my parents yet. And part of that was because I also didn't know that at this age, that you're so young. I would hate to be expected at 20 to be in a relationship where I have to get married. Marriage was so scary to even think about at 20.
You're supposed to know that this is going to go all the way.
Right. And obviously that's not possible. You don't know that. So that's why I chose not to tell my parents was because I thought that's what had to happen because I saw that with cousins and relatives and a lot of women and guys in my community. And so I remember one day there was a doorbell and I was upstairs and all of a sudden my mom or papa are like, hey, someone's at the door for you. And I come down and it's you. I was so fucking mad at you because I'm like, what the fuck is he doing at my door right now? My heart sunk and I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to tell my parents this? And you have such a young a young face, especially 22 years ago. They thought you were like the province newspaper guy coming to collect payment.
I should have just taken money and just left.
Because at that time, that's what happened too, is that they would come to the door for you
I
to
was
pay.
a paper boy too, so I would have been able to
right?
pull it off.
That's so funny. But yeah, so after that, I guess I just decided to tell my parents. But at the same time, it was a good conversation because I think it just sort of was a growing moment for them and for me to recognize that I can make my own decisions without my parents having to give me permission for everything. Because you just can't do that as parents ourselves. We know that the kids have got to learn stuff on their own. So it's a good conversation with my mom and dad about.
So whether it was me, like being a white dude, or anyone else, you still would have lied?
Oh yeah, like it didn't have to do with the fact that you were white. It had everything to do with the fact that I'm just not allowed to date. That's why if you were a brown guy that I was dating at that point, I still would not have told my parents. Because I'm not allowed to date. It would be the same thing. Like you have to get married. I'm like, I don't fucking know. But my parents were good because they were like, okay, I just said to them, like, I'd rather you know from me than find out from other community members. Like, why am I hiding? If I'm hiding, that means I'm doing something wrong. And I think that's like a lesson many of us in our community have to learn is when we hide these things that we do, it just justifies, it just gives permission to believe it's something wrong. And I get being private, but there's also lying and hiding. And I'm not talking about being private. I'm talking about.
And how do you know? I mean, don't you need to date? Isn't that the whole progress?
Well, that's the hope. I was going to ask you just going back to when we first started dating, did dating me feel different than having dated a white girl?
No, there wasn't a difference in our interactions.
Yeah.
There's definitely a difference in interactions at the house. Like when I'd go over there.
Okay, like how?
Like being threatened. No, I'm just kidding.
Like being threatened by my 6 older brothers. Yeah, right.
No,
I was the 6 older brothers.
The only difference was better food. So the very first time, I think maybe it might have been the same day that I rang the doorbell.
No, that day you came to pick me up. Obviously, and we left, and then I yelled at you in the car. I was like, "Why are you?"
Right, and I said, "Like, there's no way I'm picking up somebody I'm dating down the street."
Because you were taught something different by your
that's ridiculous.
Father. Right, isn't that?
It's like so disrespectful, like, or to honk, you know, honk, and then you have to like run out, and like I don't even go and say hi to anybody.
Yeah.
No, but the food was better, and it still is. Nothing, like I said, nothing externally was different other than going and being introduced to a new culture, which I fully embraced. There's no cultural diversity where I grew up. Like you said, I mean, I know you've looked at my school pictures and you're like, these are all white people. And I never even thought
your kid
about
class photo, yeah.
And you just, you know, when you say something and it like turns a light on, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wanted to embrace everything different.
Right.
That's why that's why I went away. That's why I moved and went to Vancouver or whatever. It didn't really matter where I was going to go. I wanted to
because you came from like you came from a small city, but it's very rural, small town sort of mentality, right?
Yeah.
You came from a place where, from my experience, often there's a lot of lack of understanding and awareness of different cultures and what comes out of your mouth and how you say something. But it was different for you.
To answer your question succinctly, I guess, would be no, there's no difference dating externally. We went and did all the same things. And family-wise, the only difference was, I know I did say that, you know, of being threatened. It was a joke from your dad, which I still tell to this day.
You told that at a reception or in your speech. Yeah.
When I was helping him unload the groceries from the car.
The first time you met him, he's like, come
and he's like,
get
oh,
the groceries.
do you know what this is? And there's a field hockey stick, which obviously we don't play field hockey in Prince Albert. So I was like, no, I don't know. He's like, that's for you if you hurt my daughter or something like that. And he's always had a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's probably some truth in that.
Oh, yeah. Till this day, man. Don't mess with Arandawa.
But for me, I think it was similar, but better for me.
Yeah.
Because I got to absorb all this new stuff. And I think, and we've talked about this, I think it might have clicked on your culture switch as well.
Yeah.
Because you were always wanting to be more white.
My white girl complex, as I say. Right. Yeah.
So my interest in it, because it's super, like all this stuff is crazy interesting with history, like, what's my history, you know?
Yeah, it was really nice, like the times that you spent with Dada, my grandpa, and learning about our family history, like what brought my grandpa and his siblings out to Canada and what that experience was like. I don't know if I would have listened as closely or even thought to ask those kinds of questions. I think it's really, those are lovely memories of seeing those times where you would sit down and learn, and you and I would have interesting conversations about that too. And even my dad, like I remember my dad saying to me, like somebody asked, like often people will ask, did my family have a hard time accepting a white person? Versus people asking you, did your family have a hard time accepting a South Asian person in their family? And for me, I know I can say that my dad and I did have a heart to heart. And I think that's the thing. Like when we have these things on our minds, it's important to get them out and talk about them. And my dad didn't hold back. He very diplomatically talked to me about, of course, he always envisioned his son-in-law would be South Asian because we didn't know these were options, dating other cultures and all that. However, like my grandpa said, you grow up and you raise your kids, let alone your grandkids in this country. Obviously, you have to like adhere to customs and all that. So it was nice to talk to my dad about how, even though he would, of course, expected it would to be, he didn't feel that he lost anything with you. He felt like he gained a son. So I think it was a nice conversation to have.
And I think that, the trip to India early on as well, anytime you travel with anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
We traveled with the whole family. I think that solidifies some relationship there.
Mm-hmm.
When you get married or when you partner up with somebody, you're adding a whole nother family.
Mm-hmm.
And that family, like we always say, every family's crazy in its own way, right?
Yeah.
Learn the family craziness. We jest about it because it is just funny.
Yeah.
We all have different things that we do. So I think when you bring in another family, everyone does when they partner up. And I just got to get extra.
Once you go brown, you don't frown. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to throw in another stat. So I also looked up, when we go back to the data, what percentage of interracial marriages end in divorce. And so interestingly, the stats would say that the interracial marriage divorce rate is 15.1% higher.
Oh, wow.
Compared to same race marriages. So, and after,
where is this from?
It's like the Stats Canada thing. So after 10 years of marriage, they say interracial divorce stats show a 40.2% divorce. So like you get to 10 years and
what are we at now?
We're coming up to 15 years of marriage, but we've been together for 22. And I thought, okay, like that's interesting. Why? Like, where does that stat come from? And I did some thinking, a little bit more digging. And it's interesting because there's like a, Global News did sort of like this poll, and this journalist did this little research thing. And it was interesting to read in there that compared to white couples, interracial couples were on average more likely to experience discrimination and higher perceived stress. There's more depressive symptoms and worse overall self-rated health. And so I'm like, I think when I hear that and I look at the numbers, I think, okay, does this make sense then? Because if the divorce percentage is high, like there's lots of pressure from society around lack of acceptance when couples from different races get together. And then when you even filter that more, your own community can not be embracing and supportive as well. So bringing in someone from a different race in your family can be a difficult process. I've seen it personally. You've experienced that in
very rare though, like very rare.
You think very rare? Oh my gosh, no way, man.
Oh, you think so?
100%.
Well, okay. So when we go to
that's because South Asians are very inviting and loving of white people.
That's what I'm saying. Like when I went to India, it was amazing. I felt like super, well, I don't know if we told anybody there that we were dating, did we?
My mom said that you and I had a court marriage.
Really?
Yeah, and the big wedding was coming, and like that was 5 years after we ended up actually getting married. I thought I was your brother's
friend.
They thought you were because you're so short and Cam was so tall, and they're like, "Oh, is that Cam's friend?" Cam was 14 when we went to India.
And he was probably taller than me then.
He was 100%. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so anyway, regardless, I feel like your family was very inviting.
I think that was a unique experience, to be honest. I think that they were. I think they always have been. And I think that our family, they've done a very good job balancing our South Asian customs as well as embracing customs that Canada brings. And I think there's always been hiccups along the way because some things clash, as we've talked about before. But there was a lot of openness and welcoming. And I think you also walked in to our family and our greater family wanting that embrace as well. You would make a big effort, and I think that also had a lot to do with it. It went both ways. So I think that was a unique experience. I don't think it's as common. I mean, Carrie, we're hearing people are sending messages in frequently here about being in the South Asian community, marrying someone from the same South Asian person, marrying a South Asian, and the struggles they're having with their family accepting this person because they're not who their family wanted them to marry, right? So
in like a different caste or just
and maybe just not the guy for you. All these sorts of things that families get in the way. So I think we're that's still difficult because families in our community have quite a say. That's how it goes, and it's up to people to decide how.
Yeah, and I don't think my parents would have ever said anything. Maybe they would have. So, maybe if they didn't like you, they would have said something.
Yeah, maybe. But thinking about this, like, why do you think that we weren't part of this percentage? Like, why? I mean, I know that we have many years of marriage to go, and we'll see where this road takes us. But for the most part, we feel pretty confident we're doing a good job together. So how come you think we're not fitting this stat? Like, what's so special about us?
I think it's the family, right? Because you marry the family. Okay, so for instance, any moment in any week, if any of your family finds out that anyone's having a difficult time, you get 75 phone calls.
It's very true.
And you have to, and that at the time might be like, oh my God, that's annoying. But you can't tell me that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, you got sisters and brothers.
So,
and
I don't know if that's a your family thing or if that's a cultural thing. I'm not sure, right? But so there's that acceptance. I mean, obviously we have to look at you and I as maybe opposed to the family as well, right? So I just put up with you.
Yeah.
And I just say yes a lot, right?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Why do you think? When
I wrote this question out, I didn't know how to answer it either. I was like kind of hoping that you would answer it. But when I think about why are we so special, like what's so different or special about us, I mean, I can only speak to us.
At this moment in time, we should just make sure we're special now. I don't know. Like it seems like everybody. Yeah. So this is
hopefully we're still together when this episode airs.
Yeah.
It's like, I just think we're figuring it out as we go. And I think, when you think about, okay, what is so special if we were going to say about us? I know one thing in all the years together has been this whole turn toward each other, then like away from each other sort of mentality. And really it hit when we were only together for 2 years and you asked me to come move to Calgary with you from Surrey. And we didn't know anyone out here, transferred school. I left that family that you've brought up a few times. Obviously you can tell how connected we are. And sort of left that at the age of 22. That sort of helped us have to sort of rely on each other in a different way. But also when we were able to rely on each other in that certain way, it also allowed us to get results such as trust and commitment and, these values that people say make up a relationship. I just know for us that's been really helpful over the years.
So for all of you that just got married, move away somewhere you don't know anyone.
Well, you and I joke about that sometimes, that if we were still living out in BC, would we still be together? Because when you're part of that close-knit family, there's a lot of things that happen that,
Sure, there's definitely things you miss and there's definitely things that you potentially don't miss. So you'd miss the having family. So, drop the kids off, drop the dog off, the whole helping, whole help we never had. But then the whole other aspect of it is, and like we said, like we've all talked about, every family has their crazy. Like my family's crazy in a certain way. Your family, like we all have our crazy. There's always these little nuances of every family that's just different. That's not your family, right? So it would have been a balance, right? I just think moving away definitely gave us a foundation of building something together.
I think that's what it was. Like when we started dating before we moved to Calgary, literally 3 months within dating, we moved in together. So we've been living together for the whole time, essentially, that we've been together.
Yeah.
I thought it was so funny when we got our basement suite in Abbotsford. We got a 2-bedroom. We had to pay a little bit more because I wanted to be respectful that I was dating you, but there was no hanky-panky stuff. And my grandma was so amazing and saying, why would you pay more for that? Like, why wouldn't you guys just get a 1-bedroom suite? Like, who's going to come stay there?
Yeah, I'm like, out of everybody that you want to be respectful in quotations to, it's your grandparents. And she's calling you out.
Yeah, she's like,
what are you doing, man?
She's like, you need to be more progressive.
Yeah. Yeah, she was awesome. Now that we're talking about it, I do look at a lot of your family, younger cousins who've all come out here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that they're doing the same. Like, they're away. They've all moved away.
Mm-hmm.
It's super expensive in Vancouver, Lower Mainland. So they've come out here to build their lives. And I'm hoping that they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And their families, some of their families followed them out and whatever, right?
I think it's like time away, maybe even more so than getting away. I think time away is maybe a kinder way of just saying, sometimes I find in our community, it's very hard to put boundaries in place because we're enmeshed. We have these loyalties to our family members and all sorts of things. We rely on each other in sorts of different ways. And so things sort of get messy. And I think what helped me when we moved out here was really understanding how to love my family, be present for events and special moments, but also have a boundary up that allowed you and I to actually focus on building what you're saying, like our little goals. And that's sort of where the goal thing started.
Thanks for paying my credit card off.
I know when we first met, right? I know. I was like,
man, I owe financially. You at least, I probably owe you like $500 for that.
Sure. Oh yeah, totally. Back then, are you sure that would have been like really? That would have been access to a lot of money. $500.
As an aside, the day you walked into school, into college, it's not about education. It was about how to get you in debt.
Yeah, like all those
There's
booths.
4 or 5 booths from every bank with credit cards.
I know.
And they would
scary.
Just, as soon as you were in college, you qualified.
Yeah, it was scary. Yeah.
So back to that though.
Yeah.
The foundation.
Goals, we were just saying, right? Like
so goals as well. But so I always looked at it as we're a team.
Yeah.
We're doing this together.
Yeah.
We were really young too. So I'm not sure, like it might have been different if we already had we kind of built our personalities and built ourselves together.
Yeah, we did.
As opposed to coming in with our like really solidified personalities, right?
But can I add to that though? Because I was thinking about that too when I was preparing. I thought, okay, we did build all that together. And I really think you and I built and grew together. We were really young. We hit our 20s or 30s, now our 40s together. We've had kids. But we also have had this like space for each other to do our own growing.
Yeah.
It's not like we're just become this mutated one thing. It's been nice because I think we both in our own way need that freedom and our own time, our own whatever hobbies, our own stuff. And I like that we've continued with, okay, what do I as an individual need? How am I growing? How can I pay attention to my surroundings? Because I think that's what's really helped giving back to our relationship, knowing, hey, back 10 years ago when this thing didn't matter to me, okay, well, I've learned that it actually does, or I learned this about myself when I communicate this way. And I found there's a lot more accountability and understanding what taking responsibility for my own actions means now than we were figuring that out in 20s and 30s and all that. So I think that's because we had that space for, hey, you got to figure out your own stuff. I got to also figure out my own stuff. Your stuff is not my stuff and my stuff is not your stuff. Sticking it out together, one thing that I've appreciated, it's like, you invest a bunch of money and then hopefully you get some rewards. And grandparents sometimes feel that way. That's having kids, the investment is your grandkids. And I would say the sticking it out, being together for this long, coming to where we are now, I honestly feel we are, I would like to say, at our healthiest because I don't know how, sometimes I think how we made it through our 20s together because you're just learning, you're growing, you're figuring out stuff. And, there's this jealousy and this insecurity, all these lack of community. You're just learning in a new relationship how to communicate.
It's definitely better now. But I also think that it's a minefield out there now. Like if we were doing this again, I don't think it'd work.
If you and I met each other now, like at this age, or
I don't know how anyone gets
like in our 20s. I know. I think times
with
have changed.
The swiping, and it reminds me there was a movie with Eddie Murphy. It's called Boomerang, And Eddie Murphy was like looking for the perfect woman.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he's with this perfect woman. Visually, she's amazing. And then he looks at her toes and her one toe's weird.
My gosh.
And he's like, oh, God. And then, you know, I think
been in a relationship.
Regardless, there's someone in the movie, his buddy, and he's talking, oh, what? Like she was perfect. No, her toes were weird.
I know, but
now
that is,
everyone's toes could be weird, or any little tiny pushback or a little concern that I would have with you.
Yeah.
I would have just went on to the next person.
Yeah.
And it would have been easier. And so, yeah, I guess back to the whole conversation about, you know, giving each other freedom and giving each other the opportunity to grow separately. I think you did that with me when I left my long-term job, and we had the opportunity to allow you to do that as well, right? And those little things, because a lot of people get stuck maybe in their roles, right? And I think we've pushed those back and forth.
Yeah, I agree. Like, definitely, I even wrote that down as a note. Supporting one another's rational-ish goals and dreams is important. And I think sometimes we lose our light along the way, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be something terrible, traumatic has happened, and our light sort of dims and fades. However, we can ignite it again. And I think relationships are going to be like roller coasters. We go up and down, and that's the way it is. And you ride it out together. But also understanding that when one of you has had this dream or this creative drive or some crazy kind of idea, to whether it's to travel or go do something, I think it can be so empowering when the other partner wants to kind of get giddy and go along with that. Like, yeah, let's do that. Or you were great at supporting this idea that I had and wanted for the podcast. And from day one, you have been, do this, you and Nana actually both do this. Like, you need to get this going. And we've had a lot of time dedicated to this lovely passion project. And a lot of that time has been of yours putting forth and being part of this. And that makes me get excited and turned on in many different ways, and helps me want to give back to you, right? Like, I think it's like filling each other's buckets, but also filling our own at the same time as well. It allows me to be able to be more present for you when you get to go do this thing, whether it's, you know, hunting, camping,
all the fun stuff,
ice fishing, cutting wood.
So I think this is the thing. In a relationship, you have to get excited about what the other person enjoys. Right? So if the other person wants to travel, for instance, and you're not a traveling person, just go on the fucking vacation. Go on the holiday. Because they're doing stuff for you in the background, or they're dealing with your whatever thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
Go do the thing. Right? Yeah, you came camping twice. Is it twice or once?
I should take your advice, because I never, ever, ever would go do the camping thing.
But you did it. And everybody was like, "Oh, wow, that's awesome!" Right?
I know, lowered expectations.
And I didn't. And everybody said I should set it up different. I never did. But I'm like, this is how I camp.
Yeah.
You did it, and we're doing this, or you're doing this now. Yeah, I think you just have to suck it up and go do the things that your partner enjoys. And it's not going to be, it's going to go, and it's going to be a different thing in 5 years that they get into this. Yeah. Maybe they get into spin, or they get into yoga. Go do those things at least once with them. Yeah. If it's not your thing, well, at least you went and did it.
Right. Or at least you're open to the fact
because they're going to go, they're probably doing it for you. You might not even know. And maybe everyone does that. And I'm just thinking it. Maybe people don't do that. I don't know. But if you don't, go do it.
Yeah. I think somebody asked us about like how do we keep the spark alive in our marriage?
Physical spark?
I think it's all the things. I think it's physical attraction.
It's a big definition.
Think it's being spontaneous and exciting, and people feel like that new relationship, new car smell kind of time together, sort of honeymoon phase fades out.
Yeah.
And I think something you said sort of reminded me about that point of what you're saying right now about go do the thing that makes your partner happy, or support that space for them to do the thing that makes them happy.
Celebrate the little things with them.
Yeah, I think that's part of igniting that spark. Like that gets me excited. And I think it also contributes to then creating rituals together as a partnership. People do this in successful teams at work. So of course it's going to work in a partnership, in a marriage where you have these cute little, it could be anything from having dessert together in front of the TV to whatever thing you want to do weekly, annually, monthly. These things that we can come back to and ground us and remind us, oh yeah, like this is our thing together.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get away, right? It's easy to get sidetracked and busy with life and work and
You get sucked into your thing.
parenting for one. Like how do we keep that spark alive with kids?
So I'll tell you, and maybe we talked about this in the past. Maybe I've never told you. Back in the day, I would make sure that I had something planned 3, 4, 6 months out all the time for us.
Oh,
Whether it's something like stupid or small or whatever, I always made sure we had something in the future to look forward to.
mm-hmm.
Because then, like, well, how can we break up? You can't break up with me when we have. And the nice
We
thing
have
is,
tickets
we
to
also
the
went to a ton
outdoor
of
movie theater
weddings.
thing.
So there's always something in the future. And
Yeah.
if there wasn't, I'd set something up.
Yeah, that's cute.
So I think that we still do that.
Yeah, we do. We need something to look forward to for
So,
sure.
and it doesn't have to be something crazy. It's
No.
like, okay, we're going to go 2 cities over and stay in a hotel
Yeah.
in 3 months
Yeah.
from now. And the kids will be taken care of, whatever. Like,
yeah.
just, I think it's, setting up. And then, so those are like the little goals, but then there's the big goals. Okay, well, in 5 years, we want to be here. In 10
Yeah.
years, we want to be here, and super explicit about them. But I think we definitely knew where we were going.
Yeah.
And everything we did was towards something,
Mm-hmm.
to build something together.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, kids in marriage weren't even part of that. You remember my mom begged us to get married? She she kind of blackmailed us a little bit to do that too.
And we had to, and then we had to have these kids. God.
Yeah, right. But that was never part of our plan. It was like we were open to, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, whatever. But because I was so stuck in this place of, I can't do what everyone else is, the marriage and the kids. I wanted to be so different.
That's why you're with the white guy.
And look, we ended up married and with the kids and all that. And it's been
Thank
fucking
God.
fantastic. But at the same time, I think we were more built on the idea of, building a fun future together, having fun things to do together, whether that was getting a vehicle, or was it something a little bit more with whatever else we did to help us grow. I think those were important. And you've always been really good at that too, with let's go back and revisit our goals. Because I'm more abstracty. I like to think big picture, but sometimes we have to what's the action plan? How are we going to get there?
Yeah.
If you want to live
it's
the fancy
interesting.
life, how are we going to get there?
Because we have friends that we do these things with too. We still 3, 6, 8 years out.
Yeah.
Well, we book stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that now, and those are the friends we hang out with more.
Yeah. That
Is
we had
the
the
things
trip
that we
planned
plan with. Yeah. So maybe that's
birthday
just
rituals and these kinds of things together. Yeah.
But the spark alive thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the answer. Is continually setting up little things to do together that build both of you.
Yeah.
Build the family. Build the. I don't know. We always called it. We're a business. Right?
Yeah, we're a business deal. But I think
You're a businessman woman.
I'm a businessman woman. But the other things that I would add to that, for the spark alive thing is maybe not always, but we definitely have been this thing where, to me, it's important to date each other.
Mm.
Like even though we're married to each other, I want us to be dating each other. I want there to be, how do we stay cute to each other? How do we do these little things, whether it's send each other a little naughty text, or it's make a spontaneous plan to do something that we weren't planning on doing, or going to Circle K and buying 10,000 Maltesers to eat with me at 9:00 at night. Things like that I think help ignite that. And I also remember you and I saying, because my great aunt and uncle in London, who we really appreciated spending time with years ago, taught us that your kids can't always be your number one priority. You two have to be each other's number one. Because if you two keep each other at that level and see each other's first, all the rest will get taken care of. The kids will be a priority, all that will be, but things will be off balance if the focus goes from the two of you, because it starts with the two of you, and you raise your kids and you kick them out the door, then it ends with the two of you.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to bring up though is it's not all unicorns and rainbows. And so, we fight, we have disagreements. There's days that we don't talk.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of all of it, every single time, there's apologies made.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not for walking ahead while hiking, but there's apologies
I'm still
made.
waiting for that one, by the way.
And there's still conversations had about it. And how did we get there? And I think that's the communication.
Yeah.
And yeah, everyone's, oh, of course, you need to communicate in relationships. But you need to communicate. You need to say what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And that, we've had these guy conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even like just tell the truth.
Yeah.
Just be like, yeah, this is what pissed me off.
Mm-hmm. I would 100% agree. I like you the best when you are telling me what's going on. Our communication has changed over the years because we change as individuals.
Yeah.
Right? Like I learn how to communicate something in a completely different way than I used to 10 years ago. And now you're figuring out how to also change a way to communicate. And I think that's sort of what we're adapting. And I think if there's this awareness of ourselves, it helps us be more aware for each other. Then we understand, hey, you're making this change, or I'm noticing that this thing that I do frustrates you. It never used to.
Right.
Like you'll say, these things used to make you laugh. And some stuff, okay, fine, I'm in a bad mood, but some stuff is that kind of topic to joke about, I don't find funny anymore.
Yeah.
So how do we figure that out? Because that's how so what do we do?
There's a little story where you read a book. You read this book and the guy interviewed this guy. He's like, hey, this is an amazing book. I got so much out of it. And when did you read it? It's like 10 years ago. He's like, oh, well, you should read it again. It's all updated with new, more current examples. And so the guy goes, reads it again, comes back, and how was the book? Oh, wow. It was amazing. I got so much more out of it. I totally understand. And it was the same book.
Yeah.
But he read it with it as a different human. He was a different person.
Totally.
So this is just reading a book.
Yeah.
You read a book 10 years apart and you get so much out of it. Well, we're growing together every day, and we're not going to grow together at the same rate.
Very good point.
Right? So I might think A was funny, or how many times have your friend said, you can't say that anymore?
Yes.
To me or to everybody, right? Yeah, that's not, you can't say that.
Yeah.
And so I may have heard that 2 weeks ago and you heard it today, and now you're finally not saying X or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think you need to catch up with each other's growth. A lot of relationships, one person just stops growing, or they don't want to go to therapy with their partner, and their partner really wants to go, or they don't want to grow together. I think once that starts, that's a detrimental road to go down.
It can be, for sure.
Yeah.
So kind of talking a little bit about, what do you think saves relationships?
Yeah. I mean, I think humor has to be a throughput in any relationship. You need to be able to laugh at yourself, though.
100%.
Right? And if you can't, then it's going to be difficult. Yeah. And the other thing I think is, as well, is like, you need to know if you're better together or better apart as an individual. If I look on a day-to-day basis, if I'm with you, my life will be better rather than being by myself.
I think that's a good point. And I'm wondering if we should talk a little bit more of the interracial stuff. For example, we're in a world right now where there's lots of talk about people with visible minorities and people that have not had voices are finding ways to have voices. And do you think there's a difference in what's happening with diversity and all that out there that is impacting our relationship as an interracial couple?
I don't think I have had any pushback being married to a South Asian. It hasn't impacted my day-to-day, other than when people say a racist comment as a joke. I'm with a bunch of people and they don't know I'm married to you. And then I just say something. I'm like, hey, that's... But now, because it's been so long, if somebody says that, it's typically not me that says something. It's somebody else that knows you. And they'll be like, hey, like, he's married to a South Asian girl. Like, and so that probably peaked maybe 10 years ago. And I'd say daily it's been better, and people check themselves.
So we talked a little bit about our relationship in the earlier years. I just want to circle back. How do you think we are overcoming or working through any cultural differences or communication barriers? Like, how do you think we sort of work through that? I guess my question is, in the early days of our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I remember somebody saying something, and again, it's like rumor, conjecture, about, I'd never let my daughter marry a white guy.
Yeah. So
I-
close relative, actually.
But I guess we don't know if that was said.
Yeah, they never said it to our face.
No.
But we never say things to each other's face. Just,
But
it's better to do it behind each
But
other's
maybe
backs.
it was never said. I don't know.
Yeah,
But when
yeah.
I heard that, I was, that sucks. I mean, I thought their relationship was good.
Yeah.
And you hear that. I mean, I hope they don't limit their children. Like your grandfather said, we came to this country to have a better life. And part of that, being in a new country, having a better life, is that you're going to have a different life than we did. You're going to have a different life. And however you have it, as long as you're happy, and that, you go from there. But anyways, that's the only thing I can really recall. And we had just had the conversation. So.
Well, yes. And I think that reminds me of preference versus prejudice.
Okay.
Because even when I was looking up some stats too, there are stats done with very interesting rural communities have a very clear perspective that they would say it's more for them. It's more about prejudice than preference. It's like, I would never date a white guy, or I would never date a South Asian woman, versus I never have dated someone. So like even changing the language, because you do hear that between different cultures. So I would never date a black guy. I would never date an Asian guy. Never date whatever guy.
Sure.
And same with, for a girl. And I think, oh yeah, like that's a nice language switch too, because we are trying to be more inclusive moving forward. And is it that I never would? And if that's the case, if I would never date someone because of their race, I think that's a really interesting conversation for me or any of us to have individually with like, what is it about the race that it's like, I would never date someone with black hair versus red hair. Like, what is it about that?
Sure.
And so when I was reading that, this was particularly about race, and it made me think about, but that is the dating culture. It is when you look at just even this preference piece.
How many people? I'd never date a short guy. I mean, man, that sucks for me.
Hey, it doesn't suck for me. I love short guys. Perfect for me, hey?
Tall, dark, and handsome.
Yeah.
Like all of that.
But you know what? Even in this poll, it's funny you say short guy, because it was certain races that people were like, I would never date. And then there was also preference with the color of women. So particularly in the race hierarchy, it was about women of color that they were on this lack of desirability hierarchy. So, but even more so dark skinned women of color.
Right.
So maybe if you were Chinese or Japanese or a certain Asian, maybe people date you because your skin color is not that dark. But if you're a very dark black woman or an Indian person or whatnot, then people wouldn't, right? When I was reading that, I thought, oh, that's really interesting too, is you have these interracial relationships, you have people that date people in their own race. And we are doing a lot of talk about, okay, are we inclusive? And that goes to all of us, whether you're a visible minority or not. And it's just reframing how we look at it. Is it prejudice? Is it preference? I would never date that person because of their color versus I've never dated that. I've never dated someone from that background
Changing
before.
your internal dialogue? Or
yeah,
monologue?
I think so. I think it's just being aware, just recognizing that. It's like it's definitely one more step. But I would also go back to what you said about that story, answering the thing about the cultural differences. Each time one of our boys was born, my mom moving in for 4 months.
Yeah, so I talked to somebody else about this.
Yeah.
They went through the same thing. And I think the mother was going to move in, maybe did for like a couple weeks, but it was going to be like 4 months or whatever it was. And the guy just shut it down. He's like, no, we're not doing this.
Right.
But I mean, I was like, yeah, have at her, right?
Yeah.
Like, come here. I don't care. Change all the cupboards. Put your stuff where you need it to be.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. Because again, and maybe it's always just, for me, it was always like, what am I gaining versus what am I losing? So I'm losing a bit of knowledge of where my knives and forks are, but I'm gaining.
So I guess so let's just back it up. What you're saying is, when we had Xander, when we had Terrence, my mom came to Calgary and lived with us for the first 4 months to help us both times. And a lot of this comes from in the South Asian community, especially when you go back to India. When a woman would get married, she'd leave her village pretty like permanently to go to her new village. And when she would be pregnant, she would have the privilege of being able to go back to her maiden village to be with her family, to be taken care of. And so it wasn't obviously possible for me to go out to Surrey. and it wasn't also necessary, but it was a really amazing experience having my mom come out
Yeah.
and live with us. The first time was a little rocky a few times. We all had to figure it out, but definitely by the time she left and when she did the same thing when Terrence was born, it was like a bonding, as well as it really, really helped you and I stay connected.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I think that both times, not as much as the first time. So the first time my buddies here, most of them, if not all of them, said, "That's awesome."
Oh, yeah.
Like they saw it and they're like, "Hey, that's going to be tough." Fact that you get that.
Yeah.
Because I'd never even heard of that before. I didn't know
Right.
people did that.
Right.
Just, oh, hey, do you want to come out for 4 months and raise our
I
baby?
didn't even bathe each one of our babies until the day my mom, the first time I bathed Xander was when he was 4 months and my mom left to go back to BC.
So let's just make sure that everyone knows that the kids were bathed.
Oh, yeah. My mom bathed them. And like you said, that brings us back to the oil massages after their baths. And they would get all this special, all these little rituals that she remembers as a kid as well, which was really cool to have that. Okay. So as an interracial couple, have we faced discrimination or prejudice in our personal or professional lives?
I don't think so. Have you?
Never have I ever had someone in the workplace. To be honest, I've never had any kind of discrimination said to me or that I've picked up on because we're in a relationship.
Sure.
It's been personal because I am South Asian, so it's been like a racist personal thing. I will say though, what I have experienced is getting props and respect as a South Asian person, as a visible minority, in a way that other visible minorities wouldn't have gotten because I married a white person.
Oh, okay.
So I also recognize that because I also know I've hid behind white people a lot, like my white friends, even with you. And I've done it. You know how much I've done this. It's only up until recent where I'm being more aware of this. Okay, well, which is such a crazy thing, I know, to think, right?
What about on the other side? So people in the South Asian community that you've either been around or, even on the periphery, has anybody said, "Oh, you married a white guy"? Like, has there already been like negative there?
No,
or
not
positive
not
or
in our immediate and greater family. Definitely people that don't have progressive way of thinking, I'm sure have made comments to like my family members. But I never
Nothing
have
to
I.
you, though.
Yeah, no, never.
Okay.
And never, and like I said, in our immediate and then, the semi-immediate family, I have never in my life experienced that. And I'm going to tell you something though. I think that's because I told my parents early on out of respect for our relationship and them about us. And I think they appreciated that because there was nothing negative to think of. And I think people saw that in how they also talk about our relationship. My parents are very proud of our union. They really are.
Definitely been, and this is nothing on your family.
Yeah.
But there's definitely been times where I felt, and this is just, it was a me thing, that I'm not the South Asian dude.
Yeah.
So maybe what I'm saying is I feel bad because maybe your parents or maybe your family's missing out because I'm not that South Asian dude that they can sit and speak your language with and communicate maybe a bit better. But we went through this.
Yeah, we've gone through that a few times, right? Where we talked about that. And I think, so
that was the one thing that on my end that I would have felt a little bit more of on the outside, right? Because, wow.
As soon as my parents listen to this episode, they're going to call you like 100 times to talk to you about this part.
So the nice thing is that and maybe I don't know if this is why, but definitely I had those conversations with your dad, and
I think my dad just thinks you're a jolly old time. Like he likes hanging out with you. Yeah. You're fun. You're a hoot to be around. His buddies also are a big fan of yours too, because I think you like being around them. You love hanging out with them. So shout out to the Surrey Transit soccer team there.
At the end of the day, I think I felt bad because I thought that your dad maybe was missing out on certain things because I was a white guy. And maybe he was going through, and I just say your dad because, he's the one I go to the parties or go to his buddies' parties with and all this. I hang out with his friends. Yeah. and his friends are so good. But I was hoping, I just want to make sure that he wasn't missing out not having a South Asian son-in-law.
Right.
And so we definitely have talked about that.
Yeah.
But still something that I always kind of in the background, like, oh man, that must suck for him. Like, he didn't get that
sucks
South
for you
Asian dude.
to have that in the background as well, right? And I think we can look at it as there's something missing, or we can accept the fact that it's different. And that kind of goes back to what I had asked you in the beginning, like dating me when we first met. You had dated white girls, right? I was kind of like one of the first. You did. There was
no other choice
back at home. That's fair. Yeah.
Right. There was just
right. So you wouldn't carried on with that dating white girl trajectory. We connected, we dated. And that's where I say, okay, like that's kind of my question to you, and sort of what you're saying with my dad is, do you feel like you're missing out? But I think what we're saying is there's no such thing as that. There's differences. And I think it's okay to accept. It'd be no different than if I did marry a South Asian guy. He would be his own character, his own personality in comparison to if my sister married, like to each their own. So who knows who cares too at the same time in some ways. Like I don't care about that either. And I hope that you can care less, because I think then it gets in the way of having the real conversation, which is let's just understand that there are differences.
Sure.
There are going to be, you're going to say things in a different way, and no different than I will, than my dad or his friends. And that just comes from, there are differences, right? Versus being, everybody's the same. Well, we're not.
Yeah.
But being equal doesn't count in that. Being equal is different than saying there are differences.
So can we do a thought experiment?
Okay, let's do it.
So I don't know. How do you say this? So not that we break up. So something happens to me.
Interesting.
This is like, let's not say I pass away. Let's not say I die. Let's say I get abducted by aliens or something.
I got a bad case of the hiccups.
I'm not here anymore.
Oh.
Do you go date another white dude? I mean, Justin Bieber's not on the table.
Okay, because that's literally where my head was right now.
So he's not on the table.
Bieber is available? I don't know. Like, I think it depends on, I'm more interested in the person than I am if they're white. Or I think there was a time in my life, if you had asked me that in my 20s, I would probably have said, oh, I only date white guys. I would have been that preference or prejudice thing. I don't date brown guys or whatever. And really that's just me learning in my 30s and 40s that what that was about was experiences of being exposed to things with guys that I didn't feel comfortable with, and thinking that's how all guys are, right? Like you're young. That's sort of what your mentality is. When you only look at the small picture and not the big picture, that's what you see. So I think to answer your question, I don't know. Because even now when I look at it, I find all different shades of men hot. You know, like,
for sure.
Interesting question. I like that. I like that thought little process there. I mean, I didn't really, my answer wasn't exciting, but you took Bieber out of there. So, okay, I want to ask you, as you've sort of noted, and as many people would say, communication is a key to successful relationships. How do you feel that we ensure, that people say, oh, communication's got to be open and honest. Like, what does that look like for us? What does that look like for you? What's your hope about open and honest communication in our marriage?
Well, from my point of view, is you just say what you think. Obviously, with like some diplomacy, you're not going to be like, hey, I think you're being a bitch.
Yeah.
Although those words may have come out of your mouth. I mean,
oh my gosh.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. I also would say that, again, it just comes back to, for me, self-awareness. The more I've been able to focus on the things I have to work on and be better at, I feel like it's bettered our relationship from my angle. So I guess I would say reading the signs and the patterns, talking to each other about important things as we leave the house isn't the best time to do that, because we're on our way out the door to the next thing, and we're about, so if I'm going to bring something up like, hey, last week at Chinook Mall, I spent a little extra at Anthropology, it wouldn't be good to do it during the podcast, or like when we come from something. So coming back home, just walked in the door, is that the best time to say, hey, by the way, blah, 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 blah.
But this was a growth thing. Like we got here because we went through it.
Well, we stuck it through. Yeah. We knew all those times didn't work. But that's what I'm saying is recognizing
come in the door
that.
With your phone.
From work. Yeah.
And I'd be like, really? That's how you're coming into work? And then I would do it then. But I would do it 3 days later, not even thinking about that conversation. And you'd say the same thing. And then I get pissed.
Yeah, well, this is
threw it back at me. But then I needed to, okay, I think you can't just start with anger.
Yeah.
I mean, that's way easy to do, right? And I still do it.
Yeah.
Or I'm sure we both do it, right? But you can't, you have to push that, not push it aside, but you can't start there. You have to start with like being self-aware.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, shit, I did it. And that's the best conversation
Yeah.
ever, is when you're A, in an argument, or B, about to have an argument, when the other person or you say, yeah, shit, sorry.
I know.
That's
What a
true.
big difference. It just opens the door to not
It's okay
be
being wrong.
reactive.
It's okay to be wrong.
Oh my gosh. It's right.
Yeah.
And also, I think we can look at it as a wrong or right, or is it also validating the person in front of us? Because sometimes, again, we think we have to agree with each other, and that's how we validate, meaning, yeah, Carrie, I agree that woman talked to you that way. Maybe I don't agree that woman talked to you in a bad way, but you saw it. So it's also recognizing that, okay, it sucks that you feel that way.
Yeah.
Sorry that happened. And letting it be about that, but sometimes it becomes these arguments, right, around trying to convince each other.
There's also the other thing about not dying on the hill for this.
Yeah.
Like, is this really worth me putting my back up and I'm going to fight for this?
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, you have to ensure that you're not always the one saying, okay, it's my fault. And always apologizing or whatever. It's got to be, you got to stick up sometimes and be like, no, fuck this. No, this is wrong and this is how I feel or whatever.
Totally.
Like, so it's that balance, give and take.
Yeah, and again, it's about when it happens. Is it at the right time?
Yeah.
Is this the time to have this can I talk to you for a second conversation?
Yeah.
Is this the place to do it?
Just wait till they have like a glass of wine or something first. Relaxed.
Yeah. Or on Selling Sunset, it'd always be at like events. Hey, can I talk to you about that thing that happened?
Oh, like Jerry Maguire, where he goes fires him in the coffee shop, like somewhere public.
Oh, okay.
You gotta fire somebody in public or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So if I'm gonna talk to you about something, we'll go out for coffee.
Right. I just want to go back to the open and honest thing, because like I think we hear about that a lot. I know even when I worked in mental health, those are buzzwords, and so I just want to, I don't know, make sure we tackle that right. So how do we decide to have an open and honest communication? So like, what are the things that work for us? So you talked about practicing forgiveness. So learning how to apologize to each other.
Yeah. And even like the children will say, thank you for apologizing.
Oh yeah.
Like it's a big deal, I think, to apologize. And it's hard for most people.
Yes.
It's hard for most people to be wrong. I'm fucking wrong all the time.
Well, it'd be good if you admitted it more then.
There you go. I just did I just covered all of the times I was wrong by saying that.
Right now. Yeah, that's right. So we're talking about learning to forgive each other for mistakes and letting go of past things. I think sometimes over the years, that's been something that's I've worked on, I feel, is the holding on to things for a long time. And you know what I learned about that? Some of those things that I was holding on to that I bring, you dig and you bring back up, like this thing you did like 17,000 years ago. I realize some of that in therapy. I realize this is that sometimes the values or the things that are really important to us as individuals. So I'll give you a basic example. For some people, it's being on time. I got to be on time. And so sometimes for partners, it's one partner likes to be on time and maybe another isn't always on time, is running behind. And recognizing that one is trying to bring the other to the other side. So I feel like for years, it was because I think these things over here are important.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that you keep the house super clean, because that's been my thing, important to me. And learning over the years how to not put that stress on you, because that isn't a priority for you. Like, we have to figure out how to compromise, but your level and my level are going to be two different things. And I think it's taken years, and still sometimes you fall into these patterns, but it's taken so many years to get to this place of, that's my anxiety, that's my concern, and now I'm putting it on you to make it yours.
I think you brought up a good point. So I talk about this all the time with friends about how no one can see my hands, but my hands way up high. And that was your level of clean, and my hands way low, and that was my level.
Mhm.
I've definitely brought mine up,
Mhm.
and you may have even brought yours down a bit.
Oh my god.
But having said that, let's just talk about cleaning, because that's always been an issue.
Mhm.
It's got to be this, it's got to be that.
Mhm.
This got to be put away. And we all want that, because I do think there's like one scene in Limitless where he takes this smart drug and he
Yeah.
becomes smart and he cleans his house because he's like, I can't fucking live in this
Yeah.
grossness. And so I definitely think cleanliness is next to godliness. Let's just put that, whatever that statement was.
Cleansing,
So
organization.
being clean, being organized is good for mental health. Having said that, when I see you extra stressed or whatever, you will go back to, hey, we need to mop the floor 10 times today. We need to, like, there's someone walked and there's a footprint on the floor. Like, just, and not, these are just
sweat. People's feet sweat, man.
These are just examples.
Yeah.
But I think in relationships, when you see your partner acting or reacting like they did in the past and that you guys have worked on it, I think it allows you to know that they're under stress, because we'll always revert back to that. I always call it a bicycle tire. When you ride a bike along a path, how it just puts in a groove, you'll kind of fall back into that groove. So it's a good way to start a conversation, or to see that, oh shit, my partner's probably stressed.
Bingo.
Because they're going back to this groove that they used to be in, and they haven't been for a while. So not, like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm not cleaning. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why are you being such a whatever word that you want to pick about cleaning? No, that's an opportunity for you to maybe go in and have that conversation about, why are you back here?
Yeah. Oh, I love that you brought that up, because what I love that you do, because sometimes it is also like the place that maybe you're in and it's reactive too, like, what the fuck, turn the vacuum off. But the times that you come in, you're like, hey, you come in with that voice where you're like, hey.
That's creepy.
And I'm like, no, it's a nice voice. It's like, hey. And it's like, I'm going to get a hug, or I'm going to get something to just like settle me for a moment and like reset. I know for me that works so well, because I'm already in this high anxiety. It's like today we go on this hike and I'm super anxious because I haven't hiked forever, and we've climbed Machu Picchu. We've done that, but we know how stressful hiking is for me. And I'm stressed because I got to go down a hill, and I don't like going down hills. I'm afraid of falling. And so I'm super stressed. You have to come help me. And then you're like, why are you so stressed? Like, why are you so stressed about it? And I'm telling you, my anxiety is so high right now. And then you're like, oh, how come your anxiety? Like, what about this right now is bringing your anxiety high? So I'm like, okay, well, it's because I'm worried. I'm going to fall. I'm going to get hurt. People around me are going to fall. We're going to get hurt. The bear's going to come, and all the things that I feel like I have to like protect and take care of.
Make sure when you walk, you don't chew. So you.
Oh my God. My rules were the worst. My hiking rules that I was going to go hike, put my rules on top of the watch
kids,
for bear.
You can't walk and eat at the same time. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Chewing. Yeah. Cause I was like, someone's going to choke. But what I appreciated was like, hey, what's happening for you? And letting me also tell you, like, this is my anxiety in my head working itself up. And you're asking me gentle things and just helping me sort of recognize it's happening, and gave me some time. And then, okay, I come back or whatever. But I like that conversation today out there, because again, it was not reacting to my reaction.
Right. But I definitely do that as well. So
yeah, well, we all do. We gotta celebrate the fucking milestones, the small little wins, babe.
Sure.
Right? So okay, so forgiveness is really important and open and honest. I think also I just want to talk a little bit about emotional intimacy. I think we're kind of talking about that a little bit. Intimate relationships aren't just about in the bedroom time, wink, wink. It's also how as an individual, like, what am I doing to be more vulnerable? Meaning allowing us to have these open conversations, being more open to you saying, why are you essentially like anxious? Like, what's that about? And me not being like, well, fuck you, is saying, okay, yeah, let me tell you what's on my mind. And the reason why I can do that is because you're also not coming from a place of that's stupid. Because it is when you think about it, stupid that I could choke while I'm chewing and fall. But obviously in the moment, I can't get past that. So I think it also helps to have you let me say the things that maybe quote unquote are stupid, but really my anxiety, right? In my head doing that. And I don't have to be defensive about the wrong stuff. I don't have to be defensive towards you. I just have to maybe figure out a way to work through this thing in my head, and you're helping me do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think emotional, being vulnerable, I think can be really helpful, but also helpful not just in our relationship, I think also as individuals for our own mental health as well. Like taking care of our own well-being and our mental health is so important to be part of an open and honest kind of a marriage. To me, being vulnerable is letting you see my inner child, letting you see, because usually when my anxiety kicks up, it's usually me as a 14-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old. So I'm opening you up to see some of my inner child, and that's a lot. And I have to feel comfortable to do that with you. In order to do that with you, I got to get something from you, right? And what I get from you that works, then I think it's helpful to tell you that, so I can get more, right? I think that's that back and forth to fix these little tiny things to better our relationship.
Right.
What role do you feel that being able to have emotional vulnerability or practicing that, how do you feel like that's helped even your journey with mental health, or for you as an individual, the times that you have been able to be vulnerable emotionally?
I think that obviously you being in the field has brought the verbiage into the house, right? We talk about it.
Yeah. Because of my work line, because I work in mental health.
Yeah, because your background, your work that you've done.
Yeah.
That we've talked about these things, and maybe that opens it up to be more comfortable to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was me back in the day. I mean, this is, again, we've been together so long that we've grown together.
Yeah.
So
like we've been together, I've been longer with you in my life than not, because I met you at 20 and I'm 40. Isn't that crazy? You know what? I feel like we're asking some questions that have helped shape our relationship. And maybe I should have asked you this at the beginning. You had talked a lot about family has been, at least meeting my family, it's been a big part of my identity. And so meeting each other's families likely came, as we sort of have been talking about, with some cultural differences and expectations, and some expectations that maybe we've put on ourselves. You worried about maybe something my parents might be missing from me not marrying a South Asian man. So my question to us or you is, what were our experiences like, and how do you think that they shaped us and our understanding of one another? So our meeting of each other's families, what was our experiences like, and how do you feel those experiences that you've been talking about today have shaped who we are together?
I mean, one thing, meeting each other's families, but I have a lot of anxiety around when we're around certain family members of mine. A lot of people don't have I don't know if it's a capacity or just the ability to say things the right way. And so they're going to say something, they say it in a well-meaning way, but it's not. So I have a lot of anxiety of that.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, man, like how do I restate what that thing was? So somebody will ask you a question or talk to you about something.
Yeah.
And then it's like, why even ask that question? Why are we talking about that? And then I'm trying to be that middle person and restate it. Maybe it was supposed to be stated in the first place because...
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is this whole piece about how conversations are going today, how like the level of awareness people are building and education around recognizing that visible minorities have been treated differently for centuries. You know, I have experiences, people that are visible minorities have experienced. Many of us would say our parents had it worse, right? So I get what you're saying. I think sometimes what happens though is like your family is from a rural community, and you even said you grew up with mostly white people and some Indigenous kids, but mostly white kids. And I think things are meant well. And I think where you could maybe be more helpful is, I don't feel like today, you know, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I felt like it was part of my job to just laugh at things or brush it off because people meant that comment well. But I've also learned to realize that those comments have not felt good, even though someone meant it well. It's like when someone says,
I get it.
Hey, you look good. Did you lose some weight? And people mean that well. However, that maybe doesn't leave the person on the receiving end because they're like, fuck, did I have weight to lose? I didn't lose any weight. Should I lose weight? Or did I not look good before I lost weight? Like, why does my weight mean I look good? But that's been a big part of society. Thin equals looking good. right?
But I think that comes back to communication.
It does.
A lot of people don't know how to talk anymore.
That's very true.
And they might not even say anything anymore because they're like, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to say anything because I know what this person is saying. I know what they've asked, and it's obviously going to make you feel shitty.
Definitely, yeah.
But that's not what they mean.
But why do I guess the question is why do I, then what, but why do I have to protect the fact that that's not what they meant? I think the lovely thing of where we're at in today's world is we have so many different ways, like you said, to communicate. Hey, so-and-so, I think you meant to say your energy looks great. You know, when we go back to the weight thing, versus it being about, in this case, we're talking about like people talking about my color and those things. And all I'm saying is there are ways to talk about it. Absolutely. You can be an ally and helpful and even away with those family members or those folks that you sit at the table with that say, hey, when you said this, I think you meant this. However, just so you know, it actually is translated this way. And here's why. Here's what we're learning over the centuries. This isn't what we need to talk about. We have to find a different way to talk about this. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think versus it being angry at me or someone of color that's made it uncomfortable. And this is what I love about being with you is that since that whole thing that happened at the National where Serena and I were denied the drink because of our color, you've started to build some space for yourself too, to start to think about things from a different way and recognize the power that you do bring to conversations in the presence of being a white guy. And I think even this is a really good point in how you're saying it. It's like, you're right. Like, it's not to make, now I don't want to make the other person feel bad because why can't we say, how come you see it that way? Or how come that's the thing that you want to focus in on? Yeah. Or when you do focus in on that, it would be as if I, a person of color, focused in on this thing about you as a white person.
So I think what it is, I think people are trying to connect. And when they're trying to connect, they say these things. Yeah. Or they're things that make you feel shitty. Yeah. Because they're asked it in a certain way. Yeah. So that's what I think they're trying to do. Yeah. By asking these questions that come off not diplomatic or they're said the wrong way. They're trying to say something in a certain way. They've said it wrong. They've made the person, not necessarily you, but the person of color feel shitty. Mm-hmm. They were trying to connect. It just bothers me, I guess, that why is it up to you now to educate? Like if it's just you too, right? If I'm there, then I'm the person that now
but that's what the invitation is for even Brent says it so well in saying we're not talking about bystanders because that's got a negative connotation. We're inviting people to be allies and partners. Yeah, I like that. It's in some ways walking around all day with a booger hanging out and no one tells you that you have it. People are trying to protect you. They feel like they're going to embarrass you. They're going to make you look bad. But now you've been walking around all day in this state. And when it could have been just a simple, it's not about the content. It's about how are people talking about it.
The delivery.
And people can be pulled aside and said, that is not the way to do it. Yeah. And I think connection's great. And I think the best way to connect is start with your friggin' selves, man. Like we all have to start there, right? And okay, what can I do? There's a lot of things I can do different too, because I get uncomfortable or feel the pressure of exactly what you said. Why do I have to? Now I have to deal with my feelings of being treated this way, and also deal with the fact that educator. And someone that someone doesn't like because I'm bringing it up. Like it'd be great if someone else said, "Hey, man, like let's just not comment on that." Yeah. The weight and diet thing is a really good example of that as well. Mm. Right? As time is passing, we know telling someone you look good because we think they lost weight is not the way to do it. Right. Find things from the internal, like what does it matter what my color is when you can recognize something that you love or hate about me from the inside? Yeah. I'm not a good person, or I am a good person, however you want to look at it. And it doesn't have to do with the fact that I'm South Asian. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. I also want to talk a little bit about, we talked about emotional intimacy and, going back to the spark question somebody had asked us. I think the other thing that I wanted to go back and talk about too was this piece about physical affection, like finding out if that is something that works for you or not. So
I think it has to do with the whole love language thing. There's different love languages, and to actually understand that, just because you like to be told that you look good or I love you or whatever,
Right.
isn't necessarily what your partner needs.
Yeah.
And maybe they need the hug, maybe they need or maybe they need the supper made for them at night or whatever
Right.
it is. So yeah, we're using, I'm going back to like obviously a very popular book, but I think there's some truth there, and it might, you call it a love language, call it whatever you want, but be observant of what does your partner respond to in a positive way.
And asking, like, what does that work for you? I think we change. There was a time where I did not like hugs and touches on the arm. Like, it's like my space. And now I'm the one that's always coming up to me like, huggy, please. Maybe that's because of Terrence.
Yeah.
Terrence has taught me that. I think it's recognizing. I also like being able to say to you, I want more of this or I want less of this too. Because sometimes I think we put the pressure on each other to just know. Yeah. You should know that I no longer like it when you do blah blah blah,
right? Or when you say this, no more,
right? But versus saying, hey, I really love when you do that, or I really like that you do this.
But again, I think it goes back to this theme that's going like through this conversation is growth, just recognizing that you will grow differently.
Yeah,
you'll grow at different speeds.
Yeah,
and I see a lot of people grow way faster.
Sometimes maybe, yeah,
or and maybe not, but I always think that, like, okay, well, what if I stall out? Oh, and the other thing I was going to bring up in terms of like relationships and health is, and I know everyone's going to be like, whatever, but working out. Like doing something physical together, like going for walks. Like we see people going for walks all the time. Or just making sure that you're doing something healthy for yourself, because that will resonate in the whole household.
Yeah.
Whether it's with your family or whether it's with your friends or, your kids or whatever.
Yeah.
Ensuring that, I'm not saying go work out, 10 times a week, but do something for yourself. Like do a pull-up, do a push-up. I always remember, Ryan Reynolds goes into Jason Bateman's body in this movie when they switch bodies, right?
Okay, yeah.
One of those movies.
Oh, yeah, the change up or something like that.
And Ryan Reynolds is standing in front of the mirror in Jason Bateman's body. And Ryan Reynolds is obviously like ripped.
Yeah.
And he says something like, dude, do a push-up. Like just do a push-up once in a while.
Yeah.
Like just do a fucking push-up.
Yeah.
Just get it. It'll help your mental health, and B, it'll help
your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll help both of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
Like I noticed that with you. If you don't work out.
Big difference for me.
For sure.
Totally. Yeah. My mood is, I have to do it daily, or else my mood is it's very foggy. Absolutely. And I appreciate the space that we have for me to be able to go and do that too. There's an understanding on your part that this is important to me.
Shout out to the gym that you go to.
My beautiful gym at Nev and Milich's.
Yeah.
Every day. Yeah. I now have my own key code to get in, but I won't use it because I feel uncomfortable going to their house.
The N&M gym.
N&M gym.
So anyway, that was just one thing that I wanted to make sure that was
just the physical,
that we had the conversation about.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't have to be, like I said, it doesn't have to be a full on whatever. Just take care of yourself, man.
I think that's true. I also think talking about body image stuff too, I think there's also like tread lightly with that too. It's how do you do that? Does that fulfill you? Are you doing it for you? Are you doing it for someone else? What are you doing it for?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right. And also understanding that because you do go work out or do something, do a push up, your body isn't going to look like Ryan Reynolds or Megan Fox or whoever you want to say. So I think it's also understanding, like, do we have reasonable expectations of ourselves and of each other in this realm? Like, am I doing it? If you're looking at me being healthy and it's serving me in a mental and physical capacity.
And it's not necessarily the look of it. It's just the mental health.
Yeah. Like, where's your six pack, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because, the tummy is a new black. I'm fit everywhere, but in that region.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Is there a shirt? You have a shirt yet?
I know. I should trademark that.
Uh-oh. It's too late now.
Do it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Trademark, TM'd. You talked about, again, with the open and honest communication, you talked about supporting each other's growth. We really talked about honoring each other's dreams, helping each other with that. And I think the other thing in this, okay, how do you have this open and honest communication? I think the other thing is showing appreciation to each other and of each other.
Yeah.
And one way to do that is not gossiping about each other to our friends and family.
Yeah, that's a big one.
right? Like you and I noticed that. Yeah.
Don't talk shit about your partner, or try not to.
Yeah.
There's difference about talking shit about your partner and talking to a friend about issues.
Yeah, like I need help in this area or advice, or it's like a safety issue, like it's abuse.
Yeah, of course.
Right? There's a difference with that versus Carrie didn't shut although I do tell Nev this a lot, didn't shut the drawers or the cupboards.
Oh
you
my
know,
God.
the little things that, that it's like the leaving the toothpaste on the counter kind of thing, toilet seat up stuff. But I think you have a good point with, when we talk to other people about each other, is it in good faith
it really resonated with me. I knew this person, and every time they talk about I believe they're married, about his wife, he would drop the C word, and it was just constant. And he'd call her that all the time.
That's brutal.
Maybe even to her, I don't know. But I was like, man, I just can't hear this anymore.
Yeah.
Look, we all complain about our partner here and there.
Yeah.
But when it's really negative and really, and that's really negative, I thought.
Yeah.
But he talked to his other buddies like that, and they talked together. And so then I was in here, I'm like, whoa, that's a bit much.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like talking about that, I think it just sets a bad tone. And also, where's the follow-up? Like it's like that workplace gossip. We're just talking shit about a coworker. That's gonna impact the morale and the office mood. It's gonna do the same in the household as well. And when those friends or family now hang out with you and I,
they're gonna be thinking about that.
Kieran's whatever, right. Or Carrie is whatever it is that I said. And I agree too. Well,
and you can get pulled into it. You get pulled into it. And I'm sure I've said something. If somebody says something to me, I might say, yeah, sometimes she does that too. But I think, so overall, just keep the positivity flowing about your partner, because it will leak into your own brain.
Yeah.
Right? If you start talking negative, it's just like, it'll leak in. And then you'll start seeing your partner that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Like, is there a way we can fix this thing that you don't like about me that you keep telling everyone else? Or is this the way it is? Because again, going back to that piece of, and I always remember our cousin Amin, who we did a couple of that growth podcast episode with, the cool guy in the back alley, those ones. Yeah. He talked to me one time, and he might even said it in one of the episodes, just sort of what I said a few minutes ago, like recognizing that, again, is this something that means the world to me? Like, his example was sometimes there's a partner that always answers the phone, and there's sometimes a partner that doesn't. Like, you're the one that's really, our friends even will get in touch with you before my own friends will get in touch with you before they get in touch with me. Right. And he said, talking to his therapist and recognizing that, why does she have to change the fact that she doesn't answer the phone, let's say? Why does she have to fix that? That's your issue. You're the one that has a problem with that. So what can you do to adjust that?
So that example, in many different ways, seems to be very prevalent in every relationship, that there's always something that one person doesn't do. And I think we've all kind of turned it into joking, because it's okay, because I think we have accepted that you're not the one that answers the phone, or this person isn't the one that makes the plans, or you definitely don't.
But I also won't complain.
You don't bring the clipboard, and you don't do the spreadsheet.
Yeah, the minute we get to the airport, I am no longer making any decisions. People have to decide everything for me. I'm like, I don't care anymore.
But I think if we know these roles, or if we accept these roles and they're not hurting anybody, then just roll with it. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Why hang up the phone?
Oh, yeah. You get so mad at me when I don't do that.
I think my middle finger's up at one point. Was that? And you still do it. So I guess now I just say, yeah, that's fine. I guess I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Other than like when I have 1,000 things in my hands, and then I just have to hear you singing your songs in the car.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about like financial transparency. I think that's part of having an open and honest communication. Especially being off work for the year, I believe it even more now than I did before, that each partner has to have a financial independence. There has to be income coming from both angles, or some way to show contribution in that way, because I think that there's nothing that will compare to me bringing in $100 check versus me washing the dishes. Yes, it's equal, it's important. And that's why, to me, it's always important to also be contributing and having that equal amount. And I think when
So I don't think
one partner doesn't, I think it can create insecurities and
sure,
lack
but
of.
that could be a you thing.
Oh, I keep saying for me, this
Right,
is what
right.
for me,
Because
this is
there'll
important.
never be equality. It's very rare that there's ever financial equality in a partnership.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that's
think
okay.
contribution, and you
Yeah.
have to discuss that contribution. Say like, look, I'm not gonna do X. Like, there's a ton of
I'm not going to do the
housewives
making,
or
just
house guys.
suspending.
Yeah, there's gonna be a ton of housewives, house guys, and that's a conversation you need to have with your partner. Be like, look, I know you're going out and putting food on the table, and I want to make sure that this is okay, that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and that's my contribution
Yeah.
to the house. Because typically, if that is the case, your expenses are way lower because one of the people are at home
Mhm.
taking care of the kids, doing the cooking, the cleaning, whatever the other, like all the other stuff that you might hire someone to do, right? Like
Mhm.
the nanny or a cook or what are the food delivery things
Mhm.
or going out a lot, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation that you have to have a lot.
I know I do.
There's a
I'm
really
so
good conversation, and I can't remember who it was, but they're like, there will never be equality in a relationship.
Yeah, that was Brene Brown. She was just on a podcast recently, and she talked about equality in a relationship, and particularly even in parenting. There isn't 50-50.
No, it'll always be 80-20, 90-10. Yeah, like, and it flows back and forth from each person.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you got to pick me up, man.
Sometimes I know you got to put in the 100% because I'm only given 0 today.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So anyways, it's out there. That conversation is out there. Whether you heard it from for like here right now, whether you've heard it here, that's the first time, you'll never have 50. You'll never have 50-50 relationship. It's always going to go back and forth, and you need to accept that. Obviously, if somebody's always doing 90 and someone is always doing 10,
yeah, there's gonna be burnout.
There's gonna be a conversation.
It's like again in the office place. I'm barely showing up, and my coworker's doing everything all the time. At some point,
like the 80-20 rule, right? What is it, Pareto? It should, if that's the case, it better be flipping back and forth. Yeah,
that's exactly. Sometimes you cover, and sometimes the other one does. Yeah. Okay, so I think the last thing here is we should talk about is, how do you feel like we covered how do we get through our hurdles and the ugly times? What has made you want to stay?
I think it comes down to what I've said before is, are you better together? Or are you a better human being with this person as a person? Are you better with this person? Like, obviously not the melded up, oh, I depend on you.
Yeah.
But are you better together or better apart?
Yeah.
And what does that look like? And that could change, I guess, quickly.
Yeah.
But when you have a history, the most likely answer will be yes, you are.
Yeah.
Other than if the growth pace for one person has been exponentially faster or slower than the other.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
We've both grown fast and slow.
Yep. Totally.
Right? And even like, I know now, you moving away from what you did to do this and to do, the other things you're exploring. It was not just me that's seen that. Where I'm hoping that was the same when I did my move. It's not just your partner that also sees these positive changes.
I like that. Yeah, I would definitely agree with what you're saying. I would also add that I think, like, how have we gotten through the dark times? I honestly think just time and space. Like, there are times where we will literally say, we're going to pause this.
Yeah.
Because something fun is coming up this week and we've been looking forward to this event or whatnot. And it's like, hold on. And it also goes, that whole time and pause thing also reminds me of, like, my sister and I talking about, is this something that's going to impact our relationship 5 minutes, an hour, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 years, however long you want to put time on it? Like, is the argument that we're having, or, and sometimes it's, yes, it is. It's going to impact us. We have to figure it out. And sometimes it's like, okay, this is just, again, me having that moment where I'm regressing or going back into the groove of the tires.
Yeah. Would you say that, I would say, and this is my observation, the majority of our pauses have just went away?
I think there's some.
Unless obviously it was like, okay, we really need to.
I'm going to be honest. I think some went away but kept coming back because our patterns would continue in how we didn't communicate well. And I think I would feel, being with my family and you, I think that those times helped us stay together because of the love that I see they have with you, my sister, my brother, all those things I think really, really helped me sort of realize, okay, like, is this thing, my cousin always asks, how do you guys like stay together? And I'm like, imagining having the worst possible day together and then still wanting to do it again the next day. That was also thinking of in the way that I would work in some of those crisis, really high stress situations. Think about having the worst case scenario happen in a crisis program, and you still want to show up the next day and give back and make it a better place. And it doesn't have to be the biggest change. It's just I showed up. And I think the times that you showed up for me and I showed up for you in those dark times have helped us sort of stick through. So sometimes they didn't go away. And sometimes they did. Sometimes there were things that really were okay being paused, and we figured it out.
Well, maybe that's telling that I think of a lot of the pauses are like you're like, they're not done.
Well, I think, yeah,
they're
I'm like,
coming back.
You just wait until
There's going to be an unpause day.
Yeah.
And just all the shits.
Oh my God, an unpause day. Fuck.
So November 14th, 2025 is unpause day.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh man. Look, we could sit here and talk for 10 hours. And there's no right way. Like, you're going to find your own way, but I think there should be some foundations there that you need to follow. And I mean, if you're already in a relationship for like 5 to 10 years or even 2 years, that foundation, you're building it, right?
100%. I agree. I think we just had the privilege
like,
of
we're still
having
building
been together.
Ours.
Yeah, like we're just figuring shit out still.
Yeah.
But I think the bottom line is I want to figure this shit out with you. I like that we're growing. And it also going back to, before we end here, also going back to the point you made about it's a hard time for white people to say things, and some are trying to make positive changes. Some are figuring things out. No. I think I said to someone the other day about this, I said that you've come to me and you've talked to me about, okay, like you're trying to find a space and a way to work out some of things in your own head in this time. And going back to the fact that we're in this interracial relationship, it's like, these are things that I didn't necessarily foresee coming in our relationship, but I'm glad they're here. I'm glad we're here. And I just want to say that I want to do this together. Like, I want these times that we're finding with people that are visible minorities having a voice, and white people figuring out what that means for them. I'm really excited that we're doing this together. I think it's a cool way to maybe even role model. Maybe we'll do it really well together and say, like, we can have differences and different views. However, there's a foundation, like you said, there's a line at the end of the day. We don't cross this one, but this is how we make it work.
I think it comes back to, again, doing things together that you could both be passionate about. And if you're not, then just go back and forth. Try each other's things out.
Yeah, like you said,
if they're safe,
or have a safe word.
Yeah.
What is something that you would want to have been told about being in an interracial relationship that you didn't know?
That I should have done it earlier.
Like at 10 years old.
Man, I'm like, I just honestly, and I know this sounds crazy, but I still to this day remember the very first time I sat down at your parents' table. Mm-hmm. And your mom had cooked. Yeah. I think it was butter chicken. Yeah. It could be chili chicken. It was like some sort of
chicken.
An amazing, fantastic meal. Yeah. I had never eaten Indian food.
Ever.
I mean, look, I like rice. I like chicken. Sauce in it. You know, like that's what I'm thinking. Oh, weird sauce. Okay. Yeah. Fucking amazing. Yeah. That blows my mind that I hadn't had it before. No. And then your dad brings me a beer. Yeah. And so I have a beer. And now to this day. Yeah. Every time your mom makes food, I'm like, where's the beer? I need a beer.
Yeah, you need beer with Indian food?
Yeah, lock back in, right? Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I can't see it not being this way because there's so many things. And that's why I think we like to travel as well. Yeah. Because we want to know more about other places or other people or other cultures. And that...
There's more outside of us. I would say my advice for interracial couples would be, first of all, I think... for anyone, whether you're interracial or just entering a relationship, I think learn what being open-minded means to you. So whether you're entering a relationship with someone from a different culture or same race, just what does being open-minded mean to me? I think that can be helpful. And I also think that if you are in an interracial relationship out there and maybe you're having a hard time with family and people around you accepting, I think that look at your partner, and if the two of you feel like you can do it and you're, like Carrie said, like you're gaining something out of it, you're being better people together, it's fucking worth the fight. But people can come around and people shouldn't have to decide for us who makes us happy. I think that's up to us individuals to decide ourselves.
I didn't really like my answer. My answer was just about food and like do it faster. The one thing I would supplement to what you just said was that we also said to ourselves that we both have families, but we're also starting our own family.
Yeah.
And this is our thing now.
Yeah.
Right? So our
traditions
are our thing, whether other people come in and do them with us. But we were starting this other family. Yeah. Yes, we're attached to two other our families, but we're starting this is ours.
It's our priority.
Right. So maybe that insulated us from some other stuff too, or it allowed us to a lot of times it's just how or what your mindset is, right? Or how you think of something. Like you said, what was it? Prejudice and
preference.
Prejudice and preference. It's really just self-talk.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just self-talk in your head, like, well, this is our family now. So whatever's happening on the outside, we have this barrier that protects us from all the outside stuff because it's our family bubble, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that for people out there that aren't in an interracial relationship, people that are struggling with that. I think again, it goes back to what you and I talked about, like just being okay to talk about that discomfort. Like why? Like what? Like again, like what? Why does it have to be a big deal? Why? Who decided that there has to be marriage, there has to be children, there has to be this, and then there has to be same race. It has to be heterosexual. Like times change, and I think we need to sort of evolve with that too. And so I'm a big fan of all cultures, and I appreciate you're saying that too, Carrie. And I think our listeners are there as well. So
what does it feel like to you though? Because like I feel like I gained so much, but you're already kind of in my culture, right? Like, oh, we do
that's
these.
That's a good question. Yeah. I think I can answer that today. I don't know if I can answer that back then, but when I look back now, I think I would say I gained confidence. Like being with you has helped me recognize how important my culture is. To be honest, that is the gain in knowing, being part of two different cultures together and wanting to make big life decisions, like again, buying a house, raising kids, all these sorts of things. I think it's like going to a school that you learn a different language. You get to learn extra things and have more opportunity. So I feel like I've definitely gained in that way. Absolutely. And I look at our kids and I see what they're gaining from both worlds. And I feel like that fills my bucket as well. But it's interesting that you asked me that, because I think what I thought I gained is changing. I thought I gained a spot in society because I was with a white person. And I'm realizing that that's not it at all. That's like nothing. I'm starting to like fight that more. Like who cares about that? I'm gaining these cultures coming together. I'm gaining these children that we have. Like, you know what I mean? Like to me, it's a hard one. It's a hard one to answer because I feel like I'm figuring that out again. Is there anything at this point that I'm going to ask us, like anything that we wish we had said that we didn't?
No, I think this is a door opener.
Oh, okay. So we started this little ritual. Let's do our affirmations. What did you get? You randomly got a card. What does yours say? Do you want me to go first this time, or do you want me to go?
You can rise up from anything.
Ooh, what does that mean to you?
Don't worry about getting kicked down. You're going to fall down. So today on the hike, when I think a couple times where there's a lady biking and it was like way uphill, and we're like, oh, that sucks. And I was like, hey, with every uphill, there's a downhill. Right? So don't worry about, everyone's going to get kicked down. Yeah. So you can rise up from that, I guess. Yeah. I mean, maybe not anything. I mean, if you get like hit by lightning twice in a row, you're not going to rise up against that?
That's cute. Mine is the best is yet to come. Isn't that so funny that I got that today? There's just so many more good things around the corner.
Oh, okay.
Like that's how I saw it. I was like the best. Yeah. I'm like, it's not done. We're thriving. Okay. So Carrie's already said it. Thank you to everyone listening today. We were really hoping to put out an episode that is just us genuinely talking about our relationship and the things that have worked for us and things that maybe haven't along the way. everyone's relationship is going to have its own identity. And so these conversations, we always say here, are door openers. If there's anything about this conversation that you're interested in or want to add to, I would love to have guests on that want to share their perspective about their relationship. Please reach out to us. I think you know where that is at this point. Carrie, is there something that you can leave our listeners with? If there's one thing that you hope they take from our episode today about our relationship, what would you hope that they take for themselves?
I appreciate that somebody, took the time to email, ask, talk to, bring this out and ask you for this, and that I'm part of it. So I appreciate that. Yeah, just keep asking questions.
Yeah.
If you want to know more, anything, just keep asking questions, even to yourself, right? So,
yeah, and I think that goes well with if you want to like asking each other, your partner questions, like growing with each other, right? Yeah. Like, do you still love this? Do you still not love that?
Right.
Yeah. Well said. Okay, well, our journey as an interracial couple has been filled, I would say, Carrie, feel like you would say too, with love and understanding and a little bit of resilience too. And it definitely hasn't been without its hurdles, as we've talked about. So I just think it's important for everyone listening to try embrace your own uniqueness, whether it's as an individual or in your relationship. And prioritizing our mental health, I think, can really be impactful and help us in our relationship and as individuals. Well, thanks, babe. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on today and having this conversation, and I hope you'll come back.
Thank you.
I love you.
Love you too.